Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Caitlin with Wiregrass Daily News, and I'm here with Mr. Doc Holladay and Mr. Bob Cooper, uh, President of Chapter 373, and you are President of
Army Aviation.
Friends of Army Aviation. Good morning. Thank y'all for joining me.
Good morning, Caitlin.
Okay, so what are we here to talk about today?
Well, we'd like to talk about the upcoming 29 March, which is the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Day, and we will be having three different services that is open to the public. We'll be having a luncheon in Enterprise at the Civic Center, and then we'll be having helicopter rides in Ozark, and then following that in the afternoon at 4:00, we'll be having a wreath-laying ceremony in Ozark at the memorial that honors the 50 members of the Wiregrass that were killed in Vietnam.
Okay, that sounds like a really
it's a
touching day.
It's a very important day to Bob and myself because Bob, as well as myself, served in Vietnam.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. And so we carry a lot of memories, good and bad. But this is something we do for our fellow comrades who give the ultimate sacrifice to recognize those individuals that are no longer with us physically, but mentally they'll always be with us. And my organization will provide the legacy UH-1 helicopter, which was the ultimate piece of equipment in the Vietnam War. It actually became the Vietnam War because of the Huey. The Huey is no longer flying. It's no longer in the inventory. However, we are very fortunate to have two restored flyable Hueys that we did ourselves. We've met all the FAA requirements to allow us to fly passengers on the aircraft. And it's a very unique opportunity for those who want to experience what Bob and I did, taking kids that are 18 and 19 years old in Vietnam and leaving in the middle of a rice paddy. They had no idea where they were, and then we became their lifeline. We took their food, we took their bullets, we took their wounded out, we took their dead out, and eventually we went in and took them out of hell as well. So it was called the Air Mobile concept, and that concept is still in effect to this day. Our modern Army still uses those tactics and will for well into the future. If we are involved in any future conflicts, a helicopter will play a major role in how we fight our wars going forward.
What an honor it is to sit here and talk to y'all. I've never been in war before. I've never even thought about it. So it's hard for me to understand that. But hearing you talk about it and empathizing and trying to live that through your words, that I can't even imagine.
Well, I don't know about Bob, but when I finished high school, I wasn't even 18 years old, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I know I didn't. There was two things I wanted to do in my life at that point in my life. One is I wanted to be a professional baseball player, which my dad enlightened me early on that I was not going to be a professional baseball player. And the other was I like to chase girls. And so my dad told me, so you keep chasing girls, you're going to get yourself in trouble. So the best thing for you to do is probably go spend a few years in the Army, which I did. My mother went down to the recruiting station, signed the documentation to allow me to join the Army at 17 and a half years old, and I never went home. I spent 27 and a half years in the Army after that. I started as a private. I came back to Vietnam. My first tour, I was enlisted as a crew chief. I came back, went to flight school. I went back for my second tour as a warrant officer. I flew Charlie model gunships. I flew Cobras. And then I got a combat direct commission to a second lieutenant. And then I went back for my third tour as a captain. And I was a maintenance test pilot and a maintenance officer and an in-country standardization instructor pilot in Vietnam. So I saw the beginning of the war, the height of the war, and the downturn of the war. And I can assure you the downturn was not very pretty at all. And to be treated the way we were when we came home was really a disgrace. Myself, I saw more at the age of 19 than most people will see in their entire lifetime. And to walk through the San Francisco International Airport and to be spit on and called baby killers, which we did not do, I was just totally blown away at that age why people would treat me that way after I sacrificed and was willing to give my life for this country. it was very hard for me to process that in my thought process at the time. Since then, I've learned to live with it and have accepted it. And really, until 2013, I really never talked about the Vietnam War. I didn't have anything to do with it. And then once I started doing what I was doing now, I met Bob, became a member of his organization. And once you're around people that were there, you can kind of get on the same wavelength, because we all experienced one way or the other. We experienced the same degrading emphasis or places that we went and were taught and were spit on, and things that they just treated us like we were nothing. We were just a piece of trash, and that was totally wrong. And one of the things that Bob is proud of, and myself as well, we made sure that the kids that came back from Iraq and Afghanistan were not treated the way we were.
Treated with respect.
Yes, they definitely were, and we made sure of that as well, because we were there to make sure that the public and our society treated those kids with respect that they deserve, because they were willing to lay their life on the line for this country, and they earned that respect.
Absolutely. And that's Friends of Aviation?
That's
Friends of Army Aviation.
Friends of Army Aviation, and we were located at Blackwell Field in Ozark, Alabama.
And we hold our Vietnam Veterans of America Chapter 373 meetings at Doc's office there at the hangar. And earlier you said you never thought about war or anything like that. But if you look back, the war was over in 75 in Vietnam, and probably less than 20% of the people that live in Vietnam now were even born when the war was over. Mm-hmm. And probably 60% or so of the American people were even born then. So a lot of people have no idea exactly what happened then. But there is a YouTube program out there called The Truths and Myths of Vietnam. Is the best thing that you can do to get really the right ideals is what took place. There's a lot of other films and stuff out there that are not really good, but the Truths and Myths of the Vietnam War on YouTube is very good. And again, trying to pay respect to the veterans. When the Vietnam Veterans of America was formed, their motto was "Never again will another generation of veterans be abandoned." And that refers back to what Doc said about the folks coming home from the Gulf War, and all the other folks since then have reaped a lot of benefits because of the fact that the sacrifices that the Vietnam veterans made. And much like Doc, when going into Vietnam, most people think about what's your ideal if you see about Vietnam? Most of them think about the embassy being evacuated in 75. They see the people coming off the embassy with the State Department people and last CIA and folks coming out of the country and then going out and dumping the Hueys into the ocean. But really, people don't realize that all the combat troops had left 2 years prior to that. There was really no combat troops left in Vietnam. When Doc and I left, we were winning the war. We didn't lose the war. The politicians lost the war. It might not be the correct thing to say, but that's the truth.
There's a lot of myth about how that war was fought, and I think, and when I make this statement, I won't be that far off. But if the politicians had stayed out of it and let the generals and the military left them to do the war and fight the war the way it should have been fought, we wouldn't have been in Vietnam 20 years. It would have taken less than a year and a half, and it all been over with. But because because Kennedy died, Johnson took over. Johnson didn't want anything to do with the war. He wanted to change society. He wanted to change the way people treated each other back here, and he really didn't have a lot of interest in the war. And then McNamara came along, and his thought process was all about digital, and that's how he fought the war, through digital. And then we also had to deal with the news media, which was biased in their opinion. Walter Cronkite was probably the biggest detriment to the whole Vietnam War because of his attitude. It was, you saw it every night on the TV. Every night that you were faced, our families looked at us on the TV, and the way it was presented to them was not the way it was actually happening in Vietnam. It was one-sided. It was opinionated. just like everything is today. They're biased in the way they look at things, the way they report things.
Right.
And it's not fair to those of us who are willing to fight and to give our lives to this country and to be treated like it. It's just not fair. And, I kind of keep my emotions in check as best I can, but sometimes it's very hard to do. And why kids do what they do in this day and age, and show the disrespect that they do for our flag and for this country, and we're the most prosperous, the best the best the world has to offer is right here in this country. The freedoms that we have was because of people like Bob and myself who are willing to lay our lives on the line for that freedom and to fight for that freedom. And that's what the kids are doing today. They're willing to stand up and go to war if we have to, if we're told to, and fight for this country. And that's something I'm very proud of that I did, and I know Bob is as well. And it's not like we gave 3 years of our lives. I gave 27 and a half years. I think Bob gave more than that.
I was in 30 years and 33 days.
It's a long time.
I joined the Army in 1957.
So,
Spent 12 years combat engineers in the Chemical Corps. Then in 1969, volunteered to go to the Warrant Officer program and went through flight school, and then straight to Vietnam, 69 and 70, and served there with the 240th Assault Helicopter Company. And the 4 years that the 240th was in Vietnam, we lost 38 individuals out of our company.
It's the experience, and we kind of married each other. Bob, I went to flight school before Bob did. I graduated in 67. I came out of Vietnam. I went over in 65. I came home in September 66. I went to flight school in February of 67, and I graduated in November of 67. And then I went to Cobra School at Hunter, and then I went back to Vietnam for my second tour in March of 68. And I was with the 9th Infantry Division, and I was with the aviation company or battalion that supported the division. And our primary area, first tour I was in 2 Corps, which is Pleiku and An Khie, which is Kon Tum, which bordered Laos, and a lot of the Vietnam, the NVA filtered down through the Ho Chi Minh Trail, came through that part of the country, and then they would move even farther down the Ho Chi Minh Trail into Mekong Delta, which is I Corps, or I'm sorry, which is 3 Corps, which is where I actually flew my combat missions there, which was different. It's the country itself. You go from the north, which is mountainous terrain, and then you go down to the Delta, which is all rice paddies, rivers, streams, and it's a whole different type of war fighting that you are confronted with in the various elements within the country itself.
Well, Stock said there, actually, the country was broken down into 4 corps, I Corps, or 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and 4th Corps. The 1st and 2nd Corps was, in the northern part, and then 3 and 4 Corps was down in the Delta, and then along the Parrot's Beak there were next to Cambodia. And if you may have heard of Roy Benavides, who was awarded the Medal of Honor, he was in Cambodia, Special Forces guy, and the 240th rescued him and saved his life, and he became Medal of Honor winner after that. We lost an air crew and a helicopter getting him out, but he was a very special person. And if you ever get a chance to go on, search Roy Benavides, and you will see his story.
I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot. And it is truly enlightening to hear from the perspective of people who were actually there and their experience. And it's that I don't know.
It's there's a lot of things that transpired in the process of getting there. The war itself was not pretty. Like I said, I saw more at the age of 19 than most kids see most people see in their entire lifetime. But when you look back and you start at the beginning, I actually, when I went to basic or advanced training with Fort Rucker, which was we call it AIT, advanced training. From there, I went to Fort Benning to become a part of the 11th Air Assault, which was the development of the air mobile concept, which at the time was a test environment. And the 11th Air Assault, which later became the 1st Cav Division, was the first air mobile division. And we took our aircraft down to Mobile, put them on a World War II Jeep carrier, put them in a mothball, a plastic container, and covered them all, put them on top of top of the flat top carriers, strapped them down, and then we left Mobile and went through the Panama Canal Zone. Now they did this at not quite 19 years old. Here I am going through the Panama Canal Zone. And of course, the one thing that the platoon sergeant will tell you, don't call anybody, don't tell anybody where you're going. Everybody knew where we were going. I mean, they knew that. And we got to San Diego. They let us off the ship for 24 hours, said you can make a phone call home, but don't tell them where you're going. Well, that's how ridiculous it was. They all knew where we were going. But that was an experience in itself. I mean, I was a little Spec 4, and I learned early on I did not want to be in the Navy because I didn't like to be in the claustrophobic in the bottom of the ship, sleeping on the stacked bunks. So I learned really quick that if they couldn't find you, they couldn't put you on KP. So I made myself to the top of the deck, and I slept with my aircraft. I slept under the aircraft the whole time I was there. They could never find me. So that's kind of a unique story that most people won't be able to tell you. But I think in Bob's case, he probably flew over. He didn't go over on a ship. My first tour, I actually went over on a boat, which was an experience in itself. So that's just one of many stories that we could tell you.
Being a little older than that, though, I did make 3 trips across the Atlantic on MSTS ships.
He didn't
deploying
like it.
to Germany.
You didn't like it, did you, Bob?
But the first time when I finished basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia, we got on a train, went down to Savannah, and got on a boat and went to Germany in March of 1958.
I don't even want to go on a cruise.
Yeah.
I don't.
But the big thing is, talking about those, the big thing from now, most of the units, they deploy as a unit and stuff like then. But, when we were deploying, the units that deployed like Doc did and like the 240th did when they left out of Texas, they went over on ship and got there. Then after that, those of us that came later, we just got orders and we got on individually. We didn't go as a unit. We joined the unit in country.
Yeah.
And got our in-country orientations. In fact, I remember arriving there, and our company had just lost a lot of folks, and took our check ride or in-country ride, and on my birthday in December 1969, I flew my first combat mission. So it was,
and you will never forget that day.
And the flights back then, the folks today, they might get couple hundred hours a year or something like this, but we were flying up to 140 hours a month. In the first 20 days, you could get up to 120 hours of flight time, and then you had to see the flight surgeon and say, "Are you okay?" And then get another 20 hours, so you could fly 140 hours a month. We'd fly as much in a month as a lot of the folks are getting to fly in a year now.
When did you sleep?
It was well.
Did you get to sleep any?
Very little, very little, and you take off before sunrise, and you go out into the AO area of operation, and you stay out there. The only time that I would eat would be in my first tour with sea rations. I never got an actually cooked meal per se because they didn't have the facilities in country, and everything was provided to you either through what they call B rations, which was add water to it, and they would cook it, or it came out of a sea ration can. And just an example, when I went to Vietnam, my first tour, I weighed 198 pounds, and when I came home, I weighed 132 pounds. And my mother thought that what in the world happened to my son, because I was just a beanpole when I came home. But it was because of the nourishment and the food that we got. Was not what we were used to. And of course, you didn't eat regularly. The only time I ever eat was when you was on the ground, waiting for another mission. You would open your sea cans or sea ration cans. And, it was just a way of life. You'd sleep in a sleeping bag. And those were tough times, but your camaraderie with your fellow soldiers, made time go by faster. You were always busy. You never had a lot of idle time, which made the time go by faster. And if you weren't involved in combat, then you had a chance to maybe get some shut eye when you were down waiting for the next mission. It's surprising how fast the time went by in a year. I mean, a year, of course, these kids that they make these 6 and 7, 8, 9, some made 15 rotations in country and out of country, was a little bit differently now than what it was then, because we didn't have the internet. We had shortwave radio, and where you could talk to your family if you got the right atmosphere, and then you only had 3 minutes. So most of the communication we did with our families was either through writing letters or actually making tapes, video or microphone tapes, that little tape recorder. You would talk about it and send a tape home. But that's the way we communicated. Now the kids, it's, they pick up the phone, they just dial it, and you can talk on your cell phone from point A to point B. So the communication capability is a lot different in today than it was back then, and that was kind of that made things a little bit lonelier for us being away from home like that. So,
Wow.
One of the big things there too, like Doc said, if you try to call, you were using Becca's radio, you say, "Hello, honey, over," and then she can answer back, and
Yeah.
it was, and then
always had to say over.
and then, but that was, just the way it was, and they always said nothing too good for the troops, and nothing's what they'll get, and that's kind of the way it went.
Was.
But as the saying goes, we were the best that America had to send at that time. And the big thing was back then, a good percentage of the people were draftees. There were a few of us that were regular Army that had joined, but a good percent of the folks got their letter from their friends and neighbors, and they were selected to go. They had no choice. We had the ones that made a choice that got, parents had a lot of influence, or they fled to Canada somewhere to avoid the draft. But, with the all volunteer Army and the changing of things that take place now are a big difference, and some are good and some are bad. But big thing that, Doc and I think want to do is just, again, reiterate why we're doing what we're doing, is to pay the respect to those family members on the 29th of March, which is Vietnam Veterans Day, and try to educate. One of the things that I know through the helicopter educational programs, and I know Doc and myself have gone to schools to, much like talking with you, give them some background, give them a chance to ask questions as to what we felt about the war, and it was just a job. We did what we were told to do.
Yep, it really was. And again, I, like Bob said, I think that the itinerary for folks to really understand what's transpiring that day, it all kicks off in Enterprise. So basically, it starts on the morning of the 29th. Bob will have his folks over in Enterprise at the Civic Center. We'll bring the helicopter, the UH-1 Huey helicopter, will land around 9:00. We'll have the capability to position the aircraft for static display. All this has been worked out by Bob. The crew knows where the aircraft goes. Myself, I will not be there because I have to run our family day and our annual meeting with the memberships. It's something that's required by our bylaws, and the board has to actually interface with the memberships as well, so that we can talk about the business at hand, from what happened last year, what's going to happen this year. And it's something we do annually. So what we have done, because I can't be there, Bob, I'm sending people that were in Vietnam that are going to be there, and Bob is going to be there to handle that part. Once that part, the meal is facilitated, they get a lunching. Bob says his part. Then eventually, the folks will come to Ozark, where once they get to Ozark, those who want to fly on the aircraft and experience what we call a ride of a lifetime. It is a piece of history. And when you get on the aircraft, what's really unique about it, if people will just take their mindset and think about the kids, the 18 and 19-year-old kids that we put in the back of that aircraft and flew, and they were actually 18 and 19 years old. I think the average age was like 21. 21 and a half was the average age of the person in Vietnam. And the pilots, we had very young pilots. I mean, I was considered one of the older ones, but some of the kids came right out of flight school. They were 18 and 19 years old, flying an aircraft in that environment. Just think about it. An 18, 19-year-old out here driving a car up and down these highways. Well, it's the same mentality, same age group, But now they're thrown in an environment that, their life's on the line, and what they do is very critical. And I will tell you just a piece of history that probably 86 to 87% of the aviators that were killed in Vietnam were killed because of pilot error, not because of combat. Um, we did lose roughly 2,500 pilots due to combat environment, but a majority of the pilots that died was because of pilot error. They got themselves in a position, didn't know how to get out of it. They pushed the envelope. They thought they were bulletproof. Untouchable. I can do anything and everything. And they haven't got to that maturity level that they needed to be at, but they were thrown off the deep end of the pool, so to speak, and they, either sink or swim. But so when the folks leave over an Enterprise and they come to Ozark, they will experience an opportunity to fly in a piece of history. And once that's done and they're finished there, and the price of that ride will be $65. And I just need to tell everybody that we're a nonprofit, so the money that they spend for that ride is tax deductible. We also take donations, grants. Anybody that wants to give us money out of the kindness of their heart, it goes to a good cause, because every member of this organization is a volunteer, to include myself. Nobody gets paid a dime. Every penny that we make off of those aircraft goes back into our hangar. And Bob will tell you, we got a pretty nice facility because of it. And it also goes into maintaining the aircraft. We are very safety conscious. The chairman of the board is a retired 2-star General Hennis, who was a commander of the Safety Center at Fort Rucker, which is now at Fort Novosel. But he instilled a sense of safety in the mentality of the aviators and the crew members that fly on the aircraft about safety, safety, safety. You see something, you say something, and that's the mentality we operate our organization under. So I challenge everybody to come out and experience something that you may not ever have another chance to do, and you'll never forget the ride. I can tell you, we take kids as small as 2 years old. We've taken World War II veterans. We've taken 100-year-old folks in the aircraft. And when you get off the aircraft, the experience that they've encountered, the most gratifying and most rewarding experience I received is when a Vietnam veteran gets off the aircraft with his family, and he's got tears in his eyes, and because he's transformed back 50 years, and now he's able to tell his family what he experienced in the war, which he couldn't do before. And he comes up to me and gives me a salute with tears in his eyes.
Goodness. You're going to make me cry.
It's a very, very emotional reward, but it's the most gratifying and satisfying reward that I'll ever receive.
Talk about the aviators there that were lost. Fort Rucker or Fort Novosel has a memorial wall there at the museum, which has the names of all of the folks there. So if anybody gets a chance to go over there, they can see. If you go in that little room where they've got all the names around the wall, it'll get close to you. And also Fort Novosel PX honors the Vietnam veterans, and they pay tribute to them. They will have a ceremony on Friday the 28th instead of on Saturday. They'll be paying tribute. They'll have a cake cutting and some discounts and stuff that they do. And we will be pinning the pins, the Vietnam service pins, to the folks that have not already received pins at the PX, as well as at the Civic Center following the lunch that's, again, open to the public. And following that, at the memorial wall in Ozark, when the Chapter 607 brings their honor guard, color guard down there, they will be putting on a ceremony, which will include the fallen missing table, as well as they'll be playing taps and stuff to the
and that's happening on the 29th?
That's happening on the 29th, and we're hoping that we can talk to somebody to come over there and cover that for us with the TV that day. I think both of those events would have some good information. If not, my son has a drone company of his own that he has, and we're hoping to try to get him to take and cover most of this stuff, and he'll have some information on that we can share if we don't get some TV coverage at those three locations.
And then the 28th is the tribute.
No, the 29th is the tribute. The Fort Novosel PX, well, they will be doing it a day earlier
Okay.
And we will actually have our ceremony on the day of the actual holiday.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that's happened recently, a lot of people celebrate the holiday early or late. And I think for Doc and for myself, if we celebrate a holiday, we should think it should be celebrated on the day of the holiday,
On the day.
not a day before or a day after, so everybody can get a day off from work.
Yep.
We were brought up with the thing, work hard and play hard, and mission welfare of the troops.
Yep.
Well, Doc and Bob, it has been such an honor to hear your story and very enlightening. And before we say goodbye, I just want to make sure that everyone knows that this event is happening March 29th. It's going to be a very emotional day, I would assume.
Yes.
And at the end of the day in Ozark, there's going to be flights available. The flights are $65 a ticket.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask, did you ever do this event beside Flowers Hospital?
Yes.
Okay, so I had to work a wedding one Saturday, and my husband and my son sent me a picture and my son had to be 4 at the time, and he sent me a picture of he and my son in their
little earmuffs,
and I was like, where in the world are you? And he called me. He said, we just rode in a helicopter. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's scary. But my son at 4, he said that it was scary awesome.
Yep. Yeah.
So
we will be at the luncheon. We'll be having a drawing for some free rides over there that we will probably have 5 or 6 tickets that we'll offer that someone can win and then go over to Ozark to do that. But when Doc was talking about the emotional that's shown by some of the people that ride in it, recently we had a military affairs breakfast at the Benny Atkins Veterans Home there in Enterprise, and he had one of the Hueys on display there, and some of the veterans in their wheelchairs and some of their caretakers came out there, and you would see them just come up and rub the helicopter, and tears go, and these grown men that are 70 and 80-year-old just touching the helicopter because that was their lifeline.
It's pretty moving in an emotional setting. But the one thing that I want to do for you, young lady, is I want to extend an invitation to you to come out on Saturday if you're available, and I'll allow you to ride on the aircraft so that you can take this experience that Bob and I have presented to you, and you can tie it all together by riding in the aircraft, and you'll understand why we are so passionate about what we talk about. Because as Bob said, that aircraft was a lifeline to every one of the service members. That's the only way they got around country. That aircraft was the most dominating piece of equipment in that country. And really, that's the only way you traveled. I mean, yeah, they had trucks and they had tanks, but really to get from point A to point B in a timely fashion, you always rode in a helicopter. And it's an experience that I'm extending to you. If you'd like to come out,
I'll be there.
Remind me when we get through here. I'll give you one of my business cards. I already give you one, but I'll comp you right on the back so that you can experience what we've talked about.
Thank you
today.
so much for that.
You're quite welcome.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And once you hear the sound of a Huey helicopter, you can hear all the other helicopters around, and it's just noise. But the people that have been around and heard a Huey, there's no other sound like it. It's one of a kind.
No.
Well, I'm looking forward to the experience.
Yeah,
I am.
You'll be talking about it for some time to come, young lady.
Well, thank you, Doc, and thank you, Bob, for talking with me today. And we'll see you on the 29th.
Very good. Look forward to it. Thank you.